All right, our first wave is completely cured and we're ready for the next wave. Now I wait 24 hours between each wave, and the reason being is I choose a certain time in the morning in my house where there's less movement. Hubby is off at work, so I know it's the time when I have the least amount of interruptions while filming. So when I go to do the next layer, it's completely cured. You don't have to wait that long if you don't want to. 8 to 12 hours would probably work for the next layer, and here's how you test. And it's not going to work for this one because it is completely cured. Take a Q-tip, toothpick or something, and touch part of the wave that's going to be covered with the next wave. If when you lift it up there's a string coming up with it and some of the resin comes up with it, and it's sticky, it's not ready for the next wave yet. If you touch it and you just leave a little bit of an indent but nothing comes up on the toothpick or whatever you're using to test, then you're safe to do the next wave. So just so you know, you don't have to wait as long as I do. You can do it a little bit earlier. So I've got my clear resin mixed here, ready to go. So once again, I've got 2 containers here. One is going to be just for clear, and then one is going to be for my white mixture. Now in the how much resin video, or how much resin will I need video, I showed you how to calculate it, and that is to cover the entire thing. Now because we're doing waves that are shorter and shorter, each time I do less and less resin. So the first time I did about 2 ounces. Now, because we're only covering about half the coaster, I'm doing 1 ounce. And once again, I still have molds to the side so that any extras I have in my cups, I just pour them in those molds. So I'm going to use another color that's a little bit darker than the last one. It's called Cyan. Here we are. Now you'll notice my top 2 here, the blue is darker than here. And that's because remember how I mentioned that I didn't have it level. So this was thicker and I leveled it out. That resin is a little bit thicker than this resin, which makes the blue look a little bit darker. But because we're pouring waves on a couple more layers of waves, you're not going to notice that. I don't mind that one. Some are darker than others. I think it's pretty, but some people might not like the fact that they're not all exactly the same. So there we go. Isn't that a gorgeous color? There we go. Now let's mix the white, and only need a couple drops in there. So I'm mixing with some wooden skewers, and it's only because I was cleaning up and I found them and I don't even know what I bought them for. And I just decided to try use them up. When I'm done with them, I lay them on my surface and then I'll trim some of the excess off, and I'll just keep using them until the buildup gets too much. I also use regularly silicone stir sticks, and those are great because you can pick the resin off and reuse them. But you could even use like a popsicle stick or something if you wanted. All right, so I've got my gloved hand on, or my glove on my hand. Let's do the next wave. So I'm putting it about 1 inch or so back from the first one. And I try to make the wave shapes different for each layer, just to make it a little bit more interesting. I don't want them all exactly the same. And then if you don't necessarily like the shape that you poured, when you flatten it out, you can change that a little bit. Go. Now most of it just kind of spreads on its own and flattens on its own. It just normally happens. But like for this one here, to me this is a little bit too flat here, so I'm just going to push it out a little bit. There we go. And all we're doing, it doesn't need to be completely flat. We're just making sure that the surface is completely covered. Once we go in with our heat gun to pop the bubbles, everything else is going to flatten out. So we're just making sure everything's covered. So remove some of the bubbles. Love that blue color, it's so pretty. There we go. Now a thin line of our clear right alongside that blue. Our line of white. Now these cups are really, really bendable, so I typically try to squeeze them so the tip is a little bit narrower, trying to control how much white comes out. Some days it works better than others, and I see I got a drip of white from the top of the cup. If that happens, you can clean it off with some isopropyl alcohol and a Q-tip. You need to do it while it's still liquid though. It won't be able to be cleaned off once it's cured. I did it a couple times here. So I'm gonna do it after I blow out my waves. So low speed just to remove the bubbles. Now let's blow out the waves. Now, first of all, this wave here, I don't necessarily love what happened there, so I'm just going to use my stir stick just to make it a shape I like better. And then I've got my isopropyl alcohol and I've got a Q-tip. All I'm gonna do is clean that up. Anytime I go back, I use a new side of my Q-tip because I don't want to be spreading the white out. Grab another one to clean the rest of that one up. So it cleans up super quick and easy, but you have to catch it while it's still wet before it's cured. And the odd time, sometimes that isopropyl alcohol will leave a little bit of a mark on the top of the resin. These coasters are getting a flood coat once we're completely done, so that's going to be completely covered by that. So there we go. I'm going to let those cure, and I'll see you tomorrow. We'll do the last wave.